Wonderful. Whoa.
And what do you think people are responding to with this album? What made them decide to, to go out there and buy it?
Well, I don't know.
What happens when the most powerful woman in music walks past you as if you don't exist? Something started changing the moment someone whispered a lie at a funeral, and that subtle crack would widen into a chasm no warm words could bridge, leaving a legendary bond frozen in time. Imagine the stage lights dimming, and behind the scenes, a queen quietly vanishes, and what she leaves behind speaks louder than any spotlight. Some rise fast and burn bright, but sustaining that glow is another challenge entirely. Aretha didn't chase stardom. She built an empire sold from nothing. Yet the higher she soared, the sharper the gusts, and soon she found adversaries lurking in the wings. Diana or Dion, Warwick was only the opening act. A shrug misstep at a sacred goodbye, a careless phrase, transformed into gravest betrayal. She blatantly lied on me. Aretha snapped, colder than any chorus. With that, every bridge between them snapped, replaced only by icy distance. Here's the real cliffhanger. Who were the other 5 who dared to approach her? What unspoken transgressions cost them a nod, a smile, a single glance? In the world of legendary black women in music, where every chord bears history, and every note is drenched in survival, proximity to greatness becomes perilous. And today we peel back that velvet curtain. Step behind the curtain if you're curious enough to follow. Before we dig deeper, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. Dare to step into the story of queens whose crowns demanded solitude. Not every spotlight creates kinship, and not every success spawns friendship. In that realm, wounded souls carry heavy voices, and harmonies sometimes fracture into silence. Aretha and Dion weren't allies. They were parallel titans, each powerful in her own lexicon of strength. Dion's accent was gentleness, a refined pop grace. Aretha's was raw, a visceral cry pulled straight from church pews under Jim Crow's gaze. I Say a Little Prayer began as Dion's plea. It became Aretha's thunderous response, deeper, weightier, a pronouncement. No one said it aloud, but the record and the charts did. This wasn't tribute. It was a challenge, a declaration. By the time Whitney Houston's 2012 funeral rolled around, the air between them was electric. Dion, nervously smiling in somber hues, announced Aretha as Whitney's godmother. She isn't here, but she is here. That line flew out like a feather that turned to stone. Because Aretha wasn't there, and she'd never claimed that role. 5 years later, she confessed to AP she'd never forgiven that moment. It wasn't about forgiveness. It was about libel. When Dion approached backstage at a Clive Davis tribute in 2017 saying, "Give me a hug," Aretha declined with simmering, "Oh hell, no." No embrace, no truce. Only the heavy weight of decades-long friction. Let's rewind. Aretha was born into poverty, baptized in gospel, raised by elders who taught her that singing wasn't entertainment. It was survival. When America still sat black and white apart, she pushed her voice through barriers, demanding respect. She never bowed. Dion emerged too, softer, a bridge to crossover audiences. Songs like Walk On By and Do You Know the Way to San Jose were effortless, captivating. Her voice polished, her presence elegant. And while Aretha might have admired that grace, greatness is a double-edged sword, especially for black women who must constantly prove they belong. In the 60s, Aretha boldface covered I Say a Little Prayer, a Dion staple, and enlisted Cissy Houston, Dion's aunt, to back her. The arrangement soared higher. Bacharach said Aretha's cut was better. That moment stung, as if she'd used her shared gospel roots as missile fuel. Tension went deeper. Clive Davis signed both to Arista in the 80s. Then came Whitney, Dion's cousin, Davis's next golden child. Aretha, already a mountain, saw the tremor of a younger talent rising. In 1989, Aretha and Whitney do it. It wasn't, it ain't never gonna be. Close observers said that backstage. Aretha muttered Whitney lacked her artistic depth. But insiders say she was rattled, anxious that someone younger might outshine her. Fast forward to a stormy day in Detroit. Aretha, feet swollen, opted out of Whitney's funeral to fulfill a concert date at Radio City. Dion's words about godmotherhood broke the fragile veil. Aretha faxed AP, then phoned, calling the claim libelous and asserting, "We've never been friends, and I don't think Dion has ever liked me." No, this wasn't soap opera slap. It was a freeze of souls. No slurs, no public fight, but a quiet war waged through avoidance. No standing side by side on red carpets. No shared interviews, no mutual praise. At the 2014 BET Awards, Aretha strode past Patti LaBelle, parked eyes forward, while Patti's hand froze midair, longing for connection. 3 seconds that reverberated online for days. Millions of loops. Because the Queen never did accidental gestures. Patti, though, was merely the next echo in a list of women Aretha kept at arm's length. Diana Ross, Gladys Knight, Celine Dion. People whispered it wasn't just jealousy. It was a defense mechanism. In a world that specialized in diminishing black female voices, each new powerhouse threatened to shrink the space. You cheered, but not too loudly. This isn't a story of hate. It's a tale of survival. Aretha and Dion were both children of a world that often left black women voiceless. Each fought for air. Each learned that trusting another woman in that rarefied air risked losing her own. It isn't that Aretha doubted Dion's worth. She feared sharing the very light she fought so hard to ignite. Years later, they're both gone. But the feud lingers, echoing through commentary sections on YouTube, where fans still argue whose approach was more soulful, more authentic, more deserved. Dozens of thousands still question, who won that silent war? Was it ever about winning, or just refusing to lose? They moved through that charity hall like two legends avoiding each other's orbit. One, Diana Ross, entered and the room lit up. Cameras clicked. Fans mouthed her name. A few minutes later, Aretha arrived. No fanfare, no introduction. Just a quiet authority that hushed the crowd. Not a whisper, not applause, only heavy silence. But the tension spoke volumes. She refused to sit at Diana's table. The unspoken refusal louder than any statement. Aretha and Diana. Two lines destined never cross. Not out of disdain, but refusal. One was Motown's carefully cultivated diamond, radiant in sequins and choreography. The other, gospel-born, raw, and forged by struggle. The press pitted them constantly. Who is the real queen? Feeding an ugly narrative that bothered Aretha. She didn't need validation. She earned her crown note by note, scar by scar. Diana, backed by pop powerhouses, received national television, award shows, movie offers, privilege recognition that gloss her eyes. Aretha, though adored, remained framed as soulful authenticity, celebrated yet quietly marginalized by an industry comfortable with gloss over grit. Sources close to those events say Aretha often changed schedules at the last minute. No scandal, just firm requests. Don't place me with Diana. Organizers learn fast. Don't book both on one stage. One 1980s charity show organizer recalled. She'd back out if Diana was set to perform next. The guard was strategic. If proximity meant overshadowing, she avoided it. It wasn't jealousy. It was self-preservation in a spotlight that favored the polished product. She saw the subtle hierarchy. Diana first on talk shows, first on fashion covers, first in the cultural conversation. And Aretha was done sharing, and done being overlooked. The divisive silence extended to Patti LaBelle. At one Grammy Awards night, Patti glided past backstage, expecting warmth, maybe a nod. Instead, Aretha's gaze remained fixed ahead. Patti silently later reflected, I don't hold anything against her. She has her ways. Those measured words betrayed a wound. In that quiet dismissal lay a message. Respect her, yes, but don't expect closeness. Even Gladys Knight, the serene jewel of soul, encountered the same frost. Backstage at an award ceremony, Gladys paused, expecting acknowledgement from Aretha, but nothing came. Witnesses describe Aretha's eyes as chilling enough to stop the room. In their world, a shared bench in gospel, they'd battled similar segregation, shared the same church pews. Yet Aretha guarded her space fiercely. Each look denied, each handshake avoided, built a fortress around her legacy. This wasn't spite, it was strategy. An industry with limited stages and blink and you'll miss it glory demanded fierce protection. Aretha had fought poverty, prejudice, and complacency, all before she hit a note. Every spotlight mattered. Every second counted. She wouldn't risk giving away her hard-earned space. She wasn't cruel. She was calculated, whether refusing joint appearances or quietly shifting schedules. A small award ceremony in Chicago once asked her about a rising star. She replied curtly, "She's doing her thing. No more, no less." In that minimal response lay a refusal to lift another, or perhaps to validate competition she didn't trust. Remember, this was 1980s and 90s America, before Twitter feuds or streaming metrics. Conflicts hid in silences. Avoidance wasn't casual, it was deliberate. Artisans whispered backstage. If you weren't front and center, she'd walk past you as though you didn't exist. And it wasn't just the public figures. Team members, stagehands, even PR agents spoke of her insistence. If she's not top of the bill, she may not show. Bouncing ahead of another diva wasn't arrogant. It was necessary. And if Glady Night was scheduled before or after Aretha, requests for changes poured in. Through this friction emerged a pattern. Aretha didn't mind solo limelight, but she loathed being upstaged. And every move was designed to prevent it. Because in a world that consistently moved her off-screen, she refused to be sidelined again. The echoes of this cool war still linger. Today's fans debate, was she insecure? Or was she commanding respect in a world rigged to ignore her? Did she need less unity or simply more reverence? The lines blur, but one truth remains. Aretha's fortress was built of silence and boundary. She never lashed out. Instead, she mastered quiet cut, walking past like you weren't there. And for Gladys Knight, who'd known her from gospel hallways in Detroit, that cold brush left a sting deeper than any harsh word. No confrontation, no scandal, just absence and the weight of it. The spotlight dimmed in that 1976 Grammy Ballroom when Natalie Cole ascended instead of her. For 8 straight years, Aretha had dominated Best Female R&B Vocal Performance. That night, she clenched her jaw, unseen but unmistakable, and slipped away without applause. That moment whispered a truth. She felt displaced, replaced not by chance, but by a world thirsty for a younger, polished version. Natalie, with her mainstream, radio-ready taken legacy as Nat King Cole's daughter, embodied the future. For Aretha, that shift felt like a betrayal, not of talent, but of timing. She never badmouthed Natalie. No wrong note spilled in print. Instead, she offered cool neutrality, even when asked about the rising stars. In Jet magazine, she said, "Every generation has its singers. I just do my thing." That wasn't humility. It was a boundary. You don't get to succeed. You get to stand in my shadow. Natalie, for her part, never questioned that silence. She respected Aretha, praising how her path paved the way. But that deference, echoing through interviews, probably rubbed Aretha the wrong way. It placed Natalie as student, not peer. The crowd loved the new star, glimmering, energetic, booked for crossover appeal. But for Aretha, that glow came at a price. In the world of singing women of color, succession isn't simple. It's a battleground draped in history. When Natalie later battled addiction and eventually returned triumphantly with Unforgettable with Love, Aretha still watched from afar. No accolade, no gesture, only silence that stretched nearly 4 decades. It was louder than any applause because it said, "You may return, but you do not replace me." Then came Mariah, an icon branded as Whitney's heir, a 5-octave goddess. At a Diva Salute event, they passed one another backstage. Mariah entered glowing. Aretha turned away. No scandal erupted, but the cameras caught something. A diva uneasy in the presence of a legend who needed no echo. That single moment spoke volumes. A reflection of generational tension. Not malice, but the reminder of a throne still worn beneath a solitary queen. Beyoncé, that powerhouse of modern womanhood, empowered, polished, commanding, once performed a tribute. Aretha's response? Beautiful gowns. It seemed benign, but industry insiders confirmed the sotto voce sting. Looks great, but where's the soul? When Taylor Swift dominated stadiums, Aretha stayed silent. Not derision, but distance. She didn't belong to a pop world spun by marketing. Her throne was built on centuries of pain, praise, and truth that couldn't be auto-tuned. In her final years, she grew accustomed to that solitude, even legal silence. Her passing in 2018 triggered disputes over an $80 million estate tangled in handwritten wills. 3 versions surfaced, discovered under cushions and in cabinets, all contested by her 4 sons. A Michigan jury ultimately affirmed her latest will, confirming testamentary intent even when buried in text she wrote herself. Properties in Bloomfield Hills in Detroit were split among sons, and royalties from her catalog, respect. You make me feel like a natural woman chain of fools will now sustain them. One son, Clarence, received specific guardianship provisions, acknowledging his unique need. Even after her passing, Aretha Franklin's presence has not diminished. If anything, it's grown sharper, more defined, as if death clarified what life only hinted at. Her estate continues to generate millions annually through licensing deals, streaming royalties, and film rights. The 2021 biopic Respect, starring Jennifer Hudson, reignited public fascination, not just with Aretha's voice, but with her inner world. Audiences were reminded that this wasn't just a woman who could sing. This was someone who shaped culture through sheer, unflinching will. Behind the sequin gowns and fur coats was a tactician, a woman who demanded payment in cash before performing, who refused to be exploited by a system that had drained too many black artists before her. How many artists today could command a crowd, a contract, and a courtroom with such grace and grit? But what often goes unsaid is how lonely that power can become. In interviews, collaborators describe her as guarded, unpredictable, but always brilliant. They said she remembered slight, small, seemingly inconsequential moments, like footnotes she never erased. Once, a young producer forgot to call her Miss Franklin. He never worked with her again. These weren't random ego trips. They were boundaries. In a world that constantly tried to minimize her, she made sure no one ever forgot who she was. That demand for recognition, for reverence, wasn't arrogance. It was a shield. She built herself from rejection. She had no time for flattery that didn't come with understanding. And yet, what makes her story unforgettable isn't just the fire. It's the fragility beneath it. Aretha suffered personal losses, heartbreaks, and health challenges that would have crumbled most. She raised children young, lost her father to tragedy, faced tabloid scrutiny over her weight and personal life, yet she rarely let the public see her unravel. She performed until she physically couldn't, appearing on stage in 2017 with a body weakened but a voice still glowing with conviction. Her final televised performance at Elton John's AIDS Foundation Gala was a haunting display of endurance. Viewers noticed her frail frame, but when she hit that note, there it was, the soul untouched by time. The question lingers, was she ever truly understood? Did the world appreciate the cost of her greatness? There's something almost mythic about how she held court, never needing to announce her power, simply being it. When she sang "A Change Is Gonna Come" or "I Never Loved a Man," it wasn't performance, it was invocation. And that made it all the more difficult for her to accept an era when emotion became spectacle and spectacle became success. In private, she may have felt a disconnect that deepened with every new pop princess introduced as the next great voice. There's a reason her influence endures, even among artists she never acknowledged. Ariana Grande, Alicia Keys, Jasmine Sullivan, and Jennifer Hudson all echo her phrasing, her discipline, her demand for emotional honesty. And though Aretha's gaze might have passed over them without approval, they still study her. Because greatness does not require permission. It commands attention. The industry may change, taste may evolve, but what Aretha represented never goes out of style. Authenticity, resilience, and a refusal to be categorized by anyone else's measure. What's left is not a myth, but a mirror. Aretha's story forces us to confront how we treat our legends, how we forget that royalty has burdens as heavy as its crowns. She was not designed for mass consumption, and she never allowed herself to be molded into a digestible brand. In a time when celebrity often feels curated and controlled, she remained unfiltered, unfixed, and ferociously herself. So as new generations rise, streaming old hits, remixing gospel runs into TikTok challenges. The question quietly persists. Will any voice ever carry what hers did? Not just technically, but spiritually? Can anyone sing from that place of struggle, pride, and purpose again? Maybe not. Maybe that era is gone. Near the end, she embraced financial sovereignty unlike many of her era. Sources report she amassed real estate, maintained significant royalties, and left an $80 million legacy, though probate complexities reduced some assets to $18 million net after debts. But beyond her estate, what did her lifestyle reveal? She owned Detroit and Bloomfield Hills homes, valued at over $1 million each. One sold for $300,000 before probate. No private jet is documented, but she traveled first class and resided in upscale Encino and Detroit suburbs. No flashy car lists, but her vintage Cadillacs were reported luxuries of taste, not ostentation. She didn't chase brand deals, but held ownership of her masters and compositions. A rare financial coup. Insiders reveal she carried insurance, health and career protections typical of legends, and her business strategy centered on rights, not tours. Her wealth lessons are clear. Protect your voice, own your work, invest in real estate, and insulate your legacy with clarity. She built a financial fortress as meticulously as her vocal empire. In comparing her heyday to what remains, the contrast is striking. A young woman in church robes, struggling to be heard, to this, a matriarch of soul, passing on more than melodies. She fought to be respected. She demanded she'd never be forgotten. Yet she didn't coach successors. Instead, she taught by example. Stay true. Hold your ground. Don't hand your crown when it burns your hand. If this story moved you, there's more where that came from. Drop your thoughts below. Hit subscribe and join us as we uncover the untold truths of music's most unforgettable icons.